Chapter 132 Blurred Lines. Jujutsu administration wasted no time assigning Gojo and Geto on another mission. They needed patrols in Kawasaki at a shopping arcade that was experiencing sudden strange activity, inventory being moved around, alarms going off without cause, employees reporting hearing voices after hours, customers becoming irrationally agitated and paranoid, frequent injuries from tripping over nothing. The area was experiencing a severe downturn in business, causing owners to sell off quickly, leaving some of the shops abandoned. The tenants who chose to stay found themselves struggling to pay rent and losing employees at record pace. Administration suspected the surge of stress was causing cursed spirits to react to the negative energy. It was an overnight assignment, and the two sorcerers were allowed to leave class early, at Gojo's insistence, to get some rest beforehand. They tried to nap for a few hours after lunch. Geto was curled into the fetal position with his back turned to Gojo. Gojo couldn't tell if he was asleep or not. He watched the slight rise and fall of Geto's shoulders and drifted off, only to find himself waking up every time Geto shifted in the bed. As they were getting ready to leave for Kawasaki, Gojo caught Geto talking to himself in front of the bathroom mirror, but he couldn't hear his words over the running faucet. Whatever he told himself must have worked. He was still reserved, but less on edge than he was during their first assignment. They made small talk on the train ride and stopped at a convenience store for coffee. The frazzled property manager was waiting for them at his office near the shopping arcade. He was clearly exhausted. Not only had he lost several businesses in a short span of time, but his tenants' unhappiness with their work environments weighed on him deeply. He wasn't aware there was a department that could investigate the strange activity, but the authorities had put him in touch with Jujutsu Administration, Bureau of Spiritual Containment, a department the police simply referred to as Special Services. Geto was prepared to encounter hostility from the property manager, not this defeatist attitude. The manager's negative emotions were also feeding into the unusual activity happening around him. It was a never-ending cycle. Curses would never be truly eradicated if negative emotions continued to exist. The property manager left the master keys to the businesses with Gojo and showed them the drop box to leave them in when they were done. The shopping arcade was a large area to cover. They decided to split the patrol by each taking a side of the street, Gojo on the left, Geto on the right. Gojo would unlock his store first, then pass the keys to Geto. After clearing their location, they'd meet in the middle of the street and pass each other the keys. They would repeat this cycle until they reached the end of the shopping strip. It was a way to keep track of each other while still working independently. Gojo entered the first shop, a bakery that was one of the few businesses on the strip still making a profit. The curses were repelled by Gojo's powerful cursed energy. They cowered in corners, flattened themselves behind doors, hid underneath machines. Gojo had to seek them out to destroy them. Geto walked slowly through the dark bookstore. Curses were drawn to his cursed energy. They observed him at first, then crowded around him, deformed and needy, always wanting something Geto couldn't give them. These were grade 2 curses, ones that could cause real physical harm. He sent them up in blue flame and felt the low-level curses from his arsenal disappear at an alarming rate as he used them for fuel. He debated if he should prevent the curses from swarming him so he could have the space to subjugate the curses one by one and consume them. He needed to replenish his supply, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it. He would avoid having to swallow curses as long as possible. Gojo and Geto worked their way down the street, slowly but efficiently. At one point, Gojo finished his property early and saw a flash of blue fire behind the barred windows across the way. He wondered about the way Geto was relying heavily on cursed flame manipulation. His fears seemed justified when Geto stumbled out of the store to meet him in the middle of the road. "You okay?" Gojo asked. "I'm fine," Geto answered. "There was a huge swarm in there, but nothing I couldn't handle." Gojo was quiet for a moment. He wanted to voice his concern over the cursed flames. "Suguru," Gojo started to hand him the keys. "What?" Geto asked in a tired voice. Gojo pulled the keys back. "Do you want to work on these last 2 shops together?" "Fine." Geto welcomed the company. He'd started to feel fatigued. The next property was completely abandoned. There were no boxes, inventory, or shelves remaining from the previous tenant. Gojo smashed a couple of curses lingering in the dark corners, and they moved on. Their last property was a small arcade. The presence of curses was strong, and they cowered and hid under the video game consoles as Gojo passed. Gojo sighed and crawled on his hands and knees to get at them. Geto was on the other side of the room. He knelt down on the linoleum to seem less intimidating. "Come out," he coaxed the cursed spirits that were lurking around him. They were cautious of Gojo, but they couldn't resist Geto. "Come on, I want to go home," Geto said. A tiny sprite of a curse popped out from behind a coin machine. "You can stay here with us," it said in a childlike voice. "I don't belong here," Geto said quietly. "You don't?" a voice asked. A few more small curses manifested from the other machines. "Then where do you belong?" another one of them asked. "I don't know where I belong anymore," Geto answered, lifting his hands. There was a long delay accumulating the fuel to ignite cursed flame. His reserves were dangerously low. Geto felt Gojo's hand clasped him firmly on the shoulder. "I got this." And in seconds, Gojo's infinity shredded through the cursed cluster. Geto stared at the remaining empty space, his hands still poised in the air. "I had it handled," he muttered, knowing that was a lie. "I know," Gojo said, but he'd seen and heard too much. "I don't know where I belong anymore," Geto had said. "You belong with me," Gojo wanted to scream. Gojo held out his hand and pulled Geto up. "Let's go home, okay?" They dropped off the master keys. It would be another hour before the early morning trains would start running, and they stopped at an all-night diner to wait. Geto was ravenous. Gojo noticed his hands shaking as he shoveled spoonfuls of omelet in his mouth. Gojo held back from commenting and sliced his fork into the pancakes in front of him. "At least Suguru's eating," he thought. While Geto finished his meal, Gojo texted Yaga that their mission was complete and not to expect them in class that morning. A full report would be written up and submitted within 24 hours. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" Yaga replied. Gojo and Geto were tired from being up all night, but they were wired for the same reason too. They shoveled into the dorm and kicked off their shoes. Gojo drew the curtains in their room and closed the patio blinds for the first time since they'd moved in. Trying to get any rest with the sunshine radiating in their room would be impossible. Geto stripped his uniform off and locked himself in the bathroom. He brushed his teeth and looked at his tired face in the mirror. The dark circles under his eyes were in deep contrast to the pink flesh in his cheeks. Why did it have to be so obvious, he wondered, spitting toothpaste into the sink. He'd been feeling his body heat increase the past couple of days, but tried to ignore it, the way he was trying to ignore his erection while he showered. He wondered if he should try to take care of it, but he didn't want to touch himself. He tried to hide his bulge underneath a pair of snug boxer briefs and loose sweatpants. He laid down on the bed and tried to relax. Gojo looked at him as he shut the bathroom door. Geto pressed his hands to his head. He heard Gojo turn on the shower. Should I try to relieve myself? Geto slid his hands down his body and stopped at his belly. Would that even work? He reached inside his sweatpants and pushed the waistband of his boxers down. He tried to satisfy himself. He fantasized about Gojo doing it to him over the patio balcony to get himself going. He finished just as he heard Gojo shut off the shower faucet. Geto lay there, slightly breathless, his hands sticky. He didn't feel fulfilled. He felt empty. He pulled his hand out and wiped it on a shirt he discarded earlier. Geto sat at the edge of the bed. He heard Gojo rummage around the bathroom, heard the sink faucet turn on and the medicine cabinet slam shut. He lay back down just as Gojo opened the door. Gojo got a drink of water, then got into bed with Geto. Geto rolled onto his side. Gojo was once again staring at his back. "Good night," Gojo said, a slight edge to his voice. He didn't like the emotional distance between them, and he especially didn't like the physical distance. He wanted to grab Geto. "Good night," Geto mumbled. He didn't want Gojo to touch him and feel the heat radiating from his skin. He shut his eyes and tried to sleep. He wasn't sure how much time elapsed, couldn't tell if Gojo was asleep or just faking it like he was. He got up and went to the bathroom. Geto flipped the toilet lid down and sat, frustrated. He was hard again. He ran his fingers through his scalp, then let his hair hang in his face. What do I do? He put his hand down his pants but stopped. He didn't think it would work. He needed the real thing. He needed to be fucked. He tried so hard not to need anybody, but he couldn't even satisfy himself. Couldn't force his body to stop needing so much. He washed his hands and splashed cold water on his face. The ache in his crotch made him crouch over the sink. It brought him to his knees. Gojo jerked the bathroom door open and grabbed Geto, snatching him up off the floor. "No," Geto sobbed, but Gojo carried him away and laid him on the bed. He tugged Geto's sweatpants and underwear down. Gojo pulled his own pajamas down and lay on top of Geto. "No," Geto said again, turning his face away, tears streaming down his cheeks. Gojo brushed the hair out of Geto's face. "No?" he asked. Gojo waited. Geto didn't answer. He spread Geto's legs apart. Geto shut his eyes tight. He grimaced when he felt Gojo enter him. Gojo grabbed his chin, forcing him to look at him. Geto blinked against Gojo's intense, blue-eyed stare. "Are you trying to leave me?" Gojo asked as he thrust into Geto. "You left me first," Geto told him, tears still streaming down his face. "How long are you going to keep punishing me for that?" Gojo asked, voice breaking. "Forcing yourself on me isn't going to make me stay," Geto answered. "Then what will?" Gojo demanded, his face wet with his own tears. Geto's hands tightened around Gojo's throat for a tense moment, then his body jerked underneath Gojo. There was his body's relief. Then Gojo gasped and shuddered. Geto wrapped his arms around Gojo in a desperate embrace while Gojo sobbed. "I don't know why I'm pushing you away, but it hurts to be loved, especially by you, because it's the only thing I've ever wanted, and I don't deserve it." Geto cradled Gojo. "I'm still here," his touch said, "at least for now." They fell asleep, gripping each other, messy with each other's tears and fluids, marking each other in a way they could no longer erase.